Hey everybody, welcome to the Get Wealth podcast. My name is Brennan Wiersma. Today I'm here with John from Bulldog Mindset. How's it going today, man?
I'm doing good. Just got into Miami, so I'm ready.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad we were able to work this out and be able to do this interview. I've been following you for a little bit now, and I really like a lot of the content you're posting, and there's definitely a lot that I think everybody can learn from. So I guess just starting off, what's Bulldog Mindset, and how did that come to be?
Yeah, so I mean the easiest way I can describe Bulldog mindset is it's the opposite of the victim mindset, right? It's sort of the counter to everything the victim mindset represents, right? And the victim mindset is basically the mindset that it's not my fault, it's someone else's fault. Anywhere you're blaming someone and you're not taking full responsibility for your life. So Bulldog mindset is really to say you take full responsibility for your life and you like a bulldog bite onto something and you don't let go, right? It's that perseverance, the determinations, that kind of like a David Goggins type of mindset, right? Very, very similar. In fact, when I had seen David Goggins, I immediately latched on because I was like, this is exactly the kind of mindset that I try to represent with Bulldog mindset. It's really deeply rooted in Stoic philosophy, because the whole idea of the Stoic, Stoic philosophy is basically anti-victim mindset, right? Stoic philosophy says that you should insure yourself against the external world by having non-attachment to the external world, by not allowing fate, by not allowing external events and things that are happening in the world to affect you internally. And that's a key part of that. Bulldog mindset, really the mission right now is focused on teaching men to be men.
Mm.
And those are the attributes that I really consider that men should have, of not having the victim mindset, taking full responsibility for your life. And so this came about in it's sort of a long path, but I used to be a software developer, and I used to be a lot different than I am now. I used to have the victim mindset. I used to be lazy. I used to be fat. I used to be socially inept, just shy and fearful, a fearful person. And through personal development, through working on myself, I was able to change, to transform myself internally first and then externally, dramatically. And I was a software developer at one point. I have a company called Simple Programmer that was sort of the first time that I got into the world of kind of marketing and creating a brand. And that grew, that became popular. And as I started to make transformations in my life, from developer to more really delving into personal development and masculinity, it became clear to me that I needed to create a new company, a new brand that was focused on this mission. And really, because so many men are weak today, I felt like this was really necessary. And so a lot of people that were subscribed to my YouTube channel, the Simple Programmer YouTube channel, where I was already starting to talk about some of this stuff because I couldn't keep myself from doing it, they started saying, hey, how can I get that bulldog mindset that you have, John? And multiple people use that same word. So I said, okay, if my own audience is using this word, this is the perfect thing to create for the name of the company. And so that's where Bulldog Mindset came from.
Yeah, that's awesome. I really love the idea of what the brand you've turned it into, because it works so well. Like you mentioned with the David Goggins type of persona, it's goes a long ways, and you've built quite a bit underneath of that, right? So you mentioned you were a software developer, but you're also pretty big into investing in real estate, and you essentially reached a point fairly early on where you were able to, in some form, step back a little bit. Like, you were financially independent is one of the things you say you teach. So what changed from wanting to, just focus on that versus now you're coaching and kind of giving back? When did that happen?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a few points along the way, but one of the most dramatic points that really shifted for me was when I finally reached my lifelong goal of retiring young. And this happened when I was 33. And the idea was that once I had passive income, that I could live off of passive income from real estate, then I was retired. And my whole point of that, what I wanted to do was I wanted to go live on the beach, drink Mai Tais, and play video games. That was sort of the dream, right? Never have to work again and live that life. And I actually went and I lived in Maui for 2 months, and I tried to do that, and I was miserable. I was more depressed than I've ever been in my life. And there's a few different reasons for that. One of the biggest ones is because when you set a goal and that's your focus and your drive, and then you hit that goal, you now no longer have a purpose, right? We are purpose driven humans, right? We need a purpose, we need a reason to do things. And so even though it seems like, oh, retiring young, that would be great, it'd be awesome to be financially independent, and it is awesome to be financially independent, but it doesn't mean you have to retire. That's the key. And so the other reason why I was so depressed after that was because I was setting my goals based on what I could get instead of who I become. And that's the key shift that I made. And that's what really turned things around to make it so that my focus was more on giving back and growing a community and doing something in the world. Obviously still being a businessman, wanting to make money, because sometimes when I say that, people are like, well, then why do you charge for what you do? And I think it's kind of funny, because I can't really teach you how to make money and to build a business if I'm not doing the same thing. That would be hypocritical. But yeah, so it's all of those things. But that was really a big shifting point for me, is when I realized that. And also, I think what ends up happening too is it's like, you can't really have more altruistic motives until you've fulfilled some of what I call the base motives, right? So what I mean by that is that a lot of people say, oh, I want to give back, I want to contribute to the community and do all these things. And it's like, well, you're sort of always going to have this bias, this internal bias, because you have a feeling of taking care of yourself first, right? If you're not financially independent, you're not going to really be true to your cause. And so when I was able to sort of become financially independent, then I was able to basically say, you know what, I'm going to say whatever I want, I'm going to do what I want. It doesn't have to fucking make money, in the sense that, like, if people are upset by it, I'm going to speak the truth, and they can be upset and they can say whatever they want, but I'm not always going to say the things that please the crowd. Whereas before, when your whole motivation is like you have your job on the line or something like that, or you're building a business and you require that income to live, you kind of have to toe the line. You're not going to be as free. You might not say things that you believe are true, that might benefit people, because it would cost you money. And it's a logical choice. I'm not blaming people who make that choice. That's a stage that we go through in development. But for me, having that financial independence was really the thing that cut the tethers and made it so I was able to say, okay, I'm unfiltered, I'm going to say what I want to say. And and so my genuine motive now is to give the truth that's really going to help people, as opposed to having that mixed motive or conflict of interest when what you say could hurt you.
Yeah, it almost sounds like the becoming financially independent is a necessary step that you had to take to get to this altruistic position where you can, speak freely and actually kind of do the things you want to.
Yeah. And just to be clear, my position is not completely altruistic, right? Obviously, I'm making money, I'm building a business, but it's the business that I want to build. It's the way that I want to do it. It's it's I don't have to do things that I feel like are the things I need to do in order to make the money. I have the privilege of being able to serve and genuinely serve people while still making money doing it. And so that's the best of both worlds to me.
Yeah, that's super interesting. One of the reasons I started this podcast is because I'm trying to learn as much as possible so I can get to that financially independent, or I can, have different perspectives on business and just expand my network overall. But so that's an interesting perspective of, that it doesn't quite stop there. It's almost just like a stepping stone for the rest of it. But before we go too much into the rest of it, how did you get to that financially independent spot from when you were a software developer? Like, when did you get that job, and then what steps did you take to get to where you wanted to be?
Yeah, so it was an interesting journey. Some of it by accident, right? One of the things that I firmly believe in life is that people always argue between, or is it luck or is it hard work? And really, it's a mixture and a combination of the both. It's like the hard work to be prepared for the situation, the luck that you will get in your life, and to be able to take advantage of it. Because everyone has lucky moments. They just don't either recognize them, or they're not prepared enough to take advantage of them and to do the work required to maximize them. There's actually a really good book that really talks about this, called Thinking in Bets. It's by Annie Duke. She was a professional poker player for a while, and her whole mindset is very similar to the way that I think through things in terms of that. And the reason why I say it that way is because I had a lot of luck, and I had a lot of times that I was prepared for luck, and a lot of missed opportunities as well. But when I started out, one of the lucky things that happened to me is being in software development during the .com craze. I got this crazy call from a company that wanted to hire me as a software developer when I was 19 for $75 an hour with like some per diem. This was in California. So it was basically the equivalent of making like $170,000, $180,000 a year. Right. And this was
Jeez.
just, I mean, I, I packed up all my stuff and I moved to California, like it put it all in my Geo Metro. And I had bought a house actually at 19, my first house, but I wasn't smart. I just bought it because I didn't want to pay rent. I had no idea about real estate investment. I just didn't want to pay rent. That's all. That's as far forward thinking as it was. But so, you know, it turned out that I ended up leaving that house and renting it out to a friend, which turned out to be a bad choice, but it got me on that path. And when I got to Southern California, thinking I was rich, 19, and I didn't really deserve this job. I wasn't really qualified for this job, but hey, I started reading as many books as I can to try and become qualified for the job so I could, pass for the job, which I did. And when I got there though, I started running the numbers in my head and I was like, okay, how long before I'm rich, right? And for me, rich was be a millionaire, right? That's rich. Like, so I did the math and I was like, okay, if I'm making like 170,000 a year, I have taxes and stuff. So maybe I have like 140, 130 left. And then I could live off of like 30K a year in Southern California. I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor and I was buying macaroni and cheese dinner while I was making $170,000 a year, by the way. So so that was the plan. And the plan was I was going to save $100,000 every year. And then I did the math and I was like, well, how long before I become a millionaire? And then at first I was like, well, 10 years. Wait, that can't be right. And then I was like, whoa, inflation. So like 13 years, maybe 14 of saving 100,000. Can't lose this job. Sleep on a mattress on the floor. Wow, this is crazy. I was like, there's no way. And then I was like, okay, well, what if I invest the money and make like a nominal return? Nope, still, it doesn't like in the 10-year period, making even 7% return, it doesn't really cut a lot off the sentence, right? You're still, busting ass and saving money for that. So it's like, how the hell does anyone, I mean, who makes more money than me, right? Like, at 19, this is my thoughts. I'm like, let's say I made 250,000. Does this change the situation much? No, it doesn't. And that, like, who's going to make that as a software developer? That would be unheard of as a software developer. Now you could make that as a software developer, but back then there was no way, right? No one was making that. So I said, well, how do people actually get rich? This doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, if I'm making the most money that I could, at the earliest age, and it's going to take me over 10 years to do it, and then a millionaire is not even rich. That's not even rich. That's just like, entry level. So I started looking and I found that it was people who invested in real estate, that like 90% of the wealth created in the United States is from real estate. And it's kind of funny because this was 20 years ago. I stumbled upon Donald Trump back then, like 20 years ago. I was like, damn, this guy knows what he's doing. Started studying some of his stuff, right? Before anyone really knew, who he was. And, like him or hate him, he definitely made a lot of money in real estate. And that was one of the models I followed. But, I started reading up on that. I found this really good book by Gary Keller called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, still the #1 real estate book that I recommend today because they had the charts in there. It was what I was looking for. And when I looked at those charts in that book, I was like, this is it. I was like, damn. I was like, if I buy a house every single year, okay, in 15 years, I'll be rich. You know what I mean? Like guaranteed, I'll definitely be able to retire. And in 30, for sure, just buying houses and just paying off the mortgages over that period of time. And so that's what got me into investing in real estate. And so eventually I lost that software development job, the bubble burst on the .com. I still had some decent jobs, but eventually I hit a point where I couldn't get a job more than like 80K a year as a software developer, but it didn't matter because I was taking all the money I was making, I was buying a house every year. And then I started buying some duplexes, some fourplexes, and I had the plan in my mind because I had those charts. I knew what was going to happen, and I knew how I was creating my money in real estate. And I had a chart of my net worth, and I could see what my net worth was, and I could see what my cash flow and passive income was. And so I continued as a software developer. I ended up having another kind of lucky break that happened, which was that I started a software development blog called Simple Programmer, and it got popular. And I ended up getting on a bunch of like popular podcasts for developers, started to build a brand for myself and name. And I got some opportunities. I ended up building an app that did okay in the App Store, but I got an opportunity from that app. This company called Pluralsight contacted me and they said, hey, they were just starting out. Now they're $1 billion company. And they said, we're looking for authors to teach people how to create Android apps. And we saw that you just created one. There was a guy that was local in my town that had had worked for that company and was an author. And so I recorded courses for them, and I saw the opportunity. See, a lot of people who were authors at the time, they made like one course or two courses, but I made my first course, and my first course I made $8,000. They paid me. But if it was certain length and time, they would pay you royalties as well, like an author. And so I got my first payment for my course. It was like $8,000. Like, wow, that's crazy. That's good money. And then 3 months later, I got my first royalty check, and it was $5,000. And then that's when the bells went off, and I was like, whoa. I was like, this is the best opportunity I've ever had in my life. And so I just started making course after course after course. Ended up making over 50 courses for them over the next 3 years. And I was getting royalty checks of like $150,000 every 3 months. I was the most published author on their platform. Like no one had anywhere close to the number of courses. And I mean, I was working like a dog, like 80 hours a week, for 3 years, but this was my ticket. And so I funneled all that money into real estate, and that allowed me to accelerate my retirement plans. And by the time I hit 33, I had the point where I'd paid off a huge amount of property. I had a bunch of properties that I was making cash flow on, that I had mortgages on, and my net worth was, somewhere around like $3 million at that point. And I was like, okay, this is it. I've made it.
Whoa. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So not to get too much into detail, but earlier on with your real estate, how did you go about buying a home a year? It sounds like you're taking on quite a bit of or for most people would have to take on quite a bit of debt to do that. Is there like a risk analysis process, or do you put like a really high down payment? How does that work? How did you at least start that?
Yeah. So some of the things I did early on maybe were not the best. I don't know. I mean, when you don't have a lot to lose, like leverage really doesn't hurt you that much, as long as you can be close to cash flow positive. And in my early calculations, I was off because I didn't factor in maintenance. I didn't factor in vacancy rates and all these things. But it didn't matter because, because the thing is, like, you make money from the principal pay down and also from the leverage appreciation and the depreciation in real estate. So when it balances out, you might lose some money out of your pocket. So basically what I did was I started off and I bought a property, my second property, because I had the first property I had bought, it was like a $60,000 shack in Boise, Idaho, just to live in. That was the one that was not intentional. But then when I came back to Boise after this California thing, when I was really investing, I bought a one side of a duplex, like a townhouse, for $110,000, and I put 10% down on it. Okay, so I had mortgage insurance on it, but I could come up with 12 or 13K to make the down payment. That's a reasonable amount to save, and so I had that, and I still had to pay some mortgage insurance on it, and so it was like it was cash flow negative maybe by like $150 a month. Not a huge deal, but when you that's just on paper. But when you look at everything and you look at the principal pay down and you look at the depreciation, it was definitely cash flow positive, right? From a perspective of the actual numbers out of my pocket, it was negative, right? So then the very next year, I bought a second property, the second side of that duplex, townhouse, and it was about $110,000 at that point too. And what I did was I actually took I can't remember if this one maybe I just had another 10 or 15K and I put it down because I was saving 10 15K per year, which is, I mean, that's generally what you could do, right? Or you could put 20% down and save 30K a year. It's really what I tell most people when I talk about real estate investment. I say first get to the point where you're making 100K a year at a job, and that's really not that difficult to do today, right? If you can become a software developer, go to boot camp. There's a lot of ways, in sales, it's pretty easy to do, but invest in yourself, invest all the money that you're making in yourself in order to increase your skills so you can make about a 6-figure income. Because then it makes real estate investing a lot easier. You don't have to, but it'll make it faster, right? So my plan was basically to just put down 10 or 20% every year. And I experimented with getting second mortgages versus PMI, knowing that I could drop off the PMI at a certain point, or I could pay off a second mortgage early. But today I would recommend most people just put 20% down. But back then I was trying a bunch of things and running a bunch of numbers. And I said, oh, what happens if I get a home equity line of credit, pull the money out of the first property, and then buy the third property? And that's what I did. So I was quite leveraged on that one. But at that point, the first property's rent had gone up enough to support the HELOC, right, to get the down payment for the third property. So So I just kept on kind of playing that game. I would get a bunch of HELOCs on my properties, so I would have a pool of money. So I was basically reusing the money that I was, and HELOCs were really cheap at that point. It was kind of weird because at that point, regular mortgages were 6 to 7% interest rate, but HELOCs were like 3%. And so it just made sense to like pull out HELOCs and then use that as down payments on other properties. But I was super leveraged doing that. I ended up being okay. At one point, I think my maximum negative cash flow was $1,000, $1,500, something like that. But I was making decent money, so I knew that the math was working out. But when I advise people today, I say the safer route to do that just makes sense, that's solid, is just save up a 20% down payment every year and buy a property. And that's, if you're making decent money, you could do that. If you're not, then it could be every 2 years or so, and then you could eventually get to the point to do that. But yeah, I just don't like paying the PMI and the mortgage insurance. But I mean, it does work out, because if you're leveraged, like if you put 20% down, it's a 5x lever. So if a property goes up 3%, then you're going to make a 15% return on your money. And the average appreciation over the last 50 years is like between 3 and 4%. So 3 is a pretty conservative number. If you do 10% down, then it's a 10x lever. So if a property goes up 3%, you actually make a 30% return on your investment. So that's, there's very little risk when you're making 30% return. It's just that your cash flow may be negative in the short term. I'd rather see people just with washes, right? So if my advice today is usually like, if you're going to invest in real estate, try to find a deal where it'll be a wash, so that you're not getting cash flow and you're not negative cash flow, because the whole way that you're going to make money in the long term in real estate is through leverage appreciation. That is the biggest thing that is going to increase your net worth, and net worth can always be converted to cash flow. So my whole goal for guys I'm coaching today is say, let's build your net worth as much as possible. And then later, if you want cash flow, we can always take net worth and turn it into cash flow in multiple ways, right? If you have $1 million, you could buy a property cash $1 million, and you can make, what's it like, probably like 50K a year off of that, right? Or, if you have, or we could even, if you want to be real conservative, we could take $1 million and we put it in a tax-free municipal bond and get like a 4% yield on it, right? There's or a dividend yielding blue chip stock, right? We can always take net worth and convert it to cash flow. So don't focus on cash flow. A lot of real estate investors focus on cash flow. The only reason you would do that is if you're going to retire, like you want to quit your job and you want to live off the cash flow. But if you have income coming in and you're going to run a business, you're going to continue to have income coming in, stay leveraged, increase your net worth into the point that you actually want to exit.
Yeah. That's interesting. What would you recommend? So for example, for me, I'm thinking about trying to do like a duplex. And if you've heard of house hacking, buying one side of it, and then, but in that scenario, it would have to cash flow. Do you recommend just avoiding that overall and waiting until you can put, a good enough down payment and just using it to increase your net worth? Or is that, would you advise house hacking?
I mean, it's just a wave of hand. Like, so here's kind of my whole thing on the house hacking thing, that I don't think it makes a huge amount of sense. There's a small advantage that you get to it, right? So the way I look at investment is that you have to have two hats when you're a real estate investor, or as far as like buying your own property, right? The one hat you wear is the investor hat. The investor hat says, is this a good deal when I look at the cash flow, when I look at the profit and loss statement of this property, right? Is this a good deal to buy? The second hat you put on is the renter hat, and you say, is this a good deal for me to rent? And what is a good deal for you to rent? It means that it's not too big, not too small, right area, right, that you would pay for, that you'd rent. And if those two things line up, then you should buy the house that you rent, right? So house hacking falls into that. So what I mean by this is that the only advantage that you get, right? So the way I look at it is, let's say you're doing a house hacking where you buy a duplex and you live in one side. What I see it as this, I see it as you bought a duplex as the investor, okay? You rented one side out to an unknown tenant, and you rented another side out to the perfect tenant who pays the rent on time every single time. And the only other thing that you've gotten out of it is a slightly lower interest rate because it's an owner-occupied property. But other than that, you could have bought that duplex, okay, rented both sides out to other tenants, and then taken the rent that you got from one of the sides and just rented somewhere else for cheaper, if that wasn't the place for you to live. So a lot of people, what they'll do when they house hack is they'll buy more house than they would actually rent. So whatever you live in, you have to say, whatever I would have rented it out for, that's the rent you're currently paying, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so if you house hack and you live in one side duplex, and let's say that you could have rented that duplex out for $1,300 a month, okay?
Yeah.
So if you're living in it, you're effectively paying $1,300 a month rent. But if you could have lived somewhere else in the same city, and you would have had a smaller place and you would have paid $900 a month rent, then you wasted $400 a month. You're paying extra, right?
Yeah.
Even though it's paying it to you, it would have been better in that scenario to rent it to someone else, right? Get the $1,400, take $900 of the $1,400, pay your rent, and have put $300 in your pocket. That would be a better choice. So that's why I'm not huge on the house hacking thing. It's the only thing, like I said, advantage you get is that you get a slightly lower interest rate because it's owner occupied, and you get a tenant that pays the rent all on time, all the time. It doesn't destroy things. But other than that, there's no magic to it. Unless I'm missing something, but I've never, that's how I look at it.
Yeah, that sounds pretty rock solid to me. Awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah. I really am trying to figure out the most effective way to get to that, financially independent area. And to me, one of the most intriguing ways anyways was like taking care of that rent bill. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense, because you can, actually net more if you were to do it that way.
And I bought the first fourplex I bought. I lived in one of the units for a year to get the lower interest rate, because I wanted a 1/4 point less interest rate. I was like, I'm willing to live in the unit to do that. So that was the plan. And then I moved out.
Cool. As far as the money that you've made from the courses you were doing in real estate, was it all going into real estate, or did you get into the stock market at all?
There was a period of time where I played poker and where I got into the stock market. So, and surprisingly, they're almost the same exact thing. They're almost the exact same skill set, right? Like it's amazing how uncanny it is that those things are so similar, because the key things to poker and to options trading, at least like complex options trading, is bankroll management number one and emotional management number two. And so I did trade. At first I traded, regular trading, stochastic type of trading. I tend to be a random walk type of person that believes that it's really hard to beat the market doing that. I mean, it's very, very small percentage of people ever do, and a lot of it is just law of large numbers and luck. If you have 1 million people doing it, some person's going to get lucky 15 times in a row, right? There's going to be odds say that will happen with all their picks, right? So, in fact, Nicholas Taleb, I always just figure out say his name in the wrong order, whatever. Anyway, he wrote a book called The Black Swan. Also a really good book called Anti-Fraud. He's written a lot of really good books, but he talks about, in his book, he gave an example. He's like, what if you have this guy and he sends 1,000 people a letter in the mail, basically, and he's like, and he sends 500 of them this pick, and 500 of them that the stock will go up, and 500 of them that the stock will go down, right? And then if the stock goes up, then he throws away the 500 people that he said it'll go down to, and then he divides the 500 people he sees that it'll go up to into 250 and 250, and he sends them a different stock, and he says this one will go up, and the other 250, this will go down, right? And then depending on what it does, he eliminates that 250, and then he sends half, right? And so his whole thing was like, you could basically send a group of people 10 stock picks that are absolutely accurate, and they saw it every single month, and they're like, I'm putting all my money with this guy, and it's just a charlatan. So that's how I kind of view like regular stock market investing, aside from like investing in the S&P 500 like index fund. That's like the basic no-brainer thing. But there is another side to trading, which I did. I read a ton of books on options and complex options trading. So for a while I traded what's called iron condors, and it has like a 90% success rate. It's balanced out by the 10% when you lose on those bets that you lose a bigger, right? And so there's ways to manage the trade so that when things start to turn against you, you can, what it turns out to, though, to save the whole investigation of this, is that if you do complex option trading, you can make really good money. Like you can make returns of 10% on your money every month. Now that seems insanely good, but there's a catch to it. There's actually two catches to it. One is that it's basically a full-time job
Mm.
because managing all those trades is difficult. And two is that because of odds, if you've ever heard of the martingale system in betting, it's this idea that you bet. It's just kind of what I just talked about in reverse, which is that like you could bet on blackjack $5. If you lose, you bet 10. If you lose, you bet 20. If you lose, you bet 40. Right? Up until what ends up happening is people that employ the martingale system eventually go bust when they hit the table limit and they have a really bad run of luck, which will eventually happen. So to avoid that scenario, both in poker and in complex option trading, the rule is that you never put more than 2% of your bankroll into a table, to the stakes, or to a trade. And so if you think about that, if you put only 2% of your bankroll into a trade, that means in order to invest 100% of your bankroll, you have to be running 50 trades at a time. Now, some people would say, okay, we could put 4% or 5%. Either way, you're running like 20 trades, 15 trades at a time. That's a lot of work to manage those trades, to do it effectively, to maintain the emotional control in doing that. And like I said, if you're good at it, and there are people that are good at it, you can make money, and you can make really good money, but it is not passive at that point, right?
Yeah.
If you just put money into an S&P 500 index fund or something like that, a Vanguard fund or whatever, that's passive for the most part, as long as you can avoid checking it every day and wasting hours and hours of your time. A lot of people do. Ray Dalio says you should check your portfolio once a year.
Yeah.
Right? He's right, because any other time it's just a waste, right? If you're playing on it. So anyway, long story short is, yeah, I did it. I made some money on it, and I realized two things. One, I was working really hard and it was really stressful to do this and make this money. And two, I wasn't contributing anything to the world. That's why I quit poker, and that's why I quit option trading, because I realized the only thing I'm doing in poker is teaching people that they're suckers, and the only thing I'm doing in option trading is creating liquidity.
Yeah.
That's it. No value beyond that. So
Yeah, that's there's almost like two schools of trading. There's the passively, most people have it anyways with their job, or you put it in a Roth IRA, and like you said, time in the market, over timing the market. Or you can be the active investor with the stocks, and that seems to be a little bit too complex for me anyways, and unless I were to give everything to that, but I've got a lot of other stuff going on, so like most people, I think the passive is the best.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, but it's a job like any other thing. And that's why it's just like poker. Like you're actively you're grinding it out, right? And you can do it. It's fun, sure, but you might as well be spending that time creating a business and making money that that can actually be passive. Like, because you never hit a point where when you're actively trading that becomes passive.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, so I'm not a huge fan of it, and yeah, it doesn't really provide any real benefit to the world too, which at the end of the day, you kind of say, well, I don't know, like, what am I actually doing here? So
Yeah. So another part of your brand, it seems almost, is you're jacked and you run for insane amounts of time, and you're killing it in the gym, and you got your diet squared away. How important is it for somebody to take on this fitness or their health in their life related to their job, and when did that become important for you?
yeah, so I would say that the biggest thing about it is that if you want to have mental discipline, the easiest and most sure way to get it is through physical discipline.
Hmm.
Physical discipline is what you can control, right? If you do hard things and you force yourself, if you bring pain upon yourself, you will become stronger. And that will make, one of the things about it is, like, for me, like running ultra marathons, and when I was doing extreme fast, eating one meal a day, when you do that kind of stuff, it makes all the other things in your life seem very trivial, right? Like the things that might ruin your day, it takes a lot to ruin my day, right? Because I'm like, well, I gone through all of this shit, so this is small in comparison, right? And so I think that's really the way that it changes things for you. And it also builds this amazing trust in yourself, right? Having trust in yourself is really important. It's the ability to do what you say you're going to do, right? Not to anyone else, but to say what you're going to do yourself, right? And a lot of people, we say we're going to wake up and go to the gym, and we don't do that. So we have this whole narrative. We say all these things we're going to do, and then we don't actually do any of them. So we don't actually have control of our lives. And so, being physical and pushing yourself to that limit is a way of building that trust. And there's also kind of a spiritual component to it, right? I mean, when you look at the yogis, right, and the ancient, the Vedas and the tradition of yoga, they have like, I think it's like the four paths to enlightenment, or the three ways. And yeah, the three main ways, which is like, one is like through knowledge, right? You learn a lot of things, you develop, you become enlightened through that. And I'm butchering this, someone's gonna say, but this is the basic gist of it. And one of them is through, it's like the magician, the fakir, and the ascetic, but basically, so a second way is through religious devotion, right? Just the spiritual minded meditation, and but there's a third way, which is through physical pain. And it's true. It's like, you find out a lot about yourself when you run 50 miles, right? That's like, in those last 10 miles, you learn a lot about yourself. And you're able to change a lot about yourself as well. And like, it takes an amount of breakdown in order to rebuild a thing. And so that's what, for me, that's what that represents, is it gives me that ability to do that, to see, because when we're in our best, when we're not in pain, we are not seeing our true nature. It's only when we're under tremendous pressure, when we're under extreme pain, or we're exhausted to our last limit, that our true nature comes out, and we see really how weak we are. We see really how agitated we are. Our true emotions come out, right? And that's also the only time that you can change and shape those things. And so, to me, it's a way to remold yourself. And if you don't have that, and maybe you can do that in a different way, but for me, that physical discipline is what drives that. And as a man also, I feel like it's part of masculinity, is being physical, right, in this world. And there's other benefits to it as well. Obviously, having a nice physique and being in shape, is going to be attractive to women as well, which, and other men as well. You're going to be more regarded. Men will consider you part of their tribe, right, when you are a guy that has some physicality to him. So I think there's a lot of real benefits to it. And because a lot of people say, oh, I do it for the health, and yeah, most people do it for the vanity, or they do it for some other reason. It's not really like for the health. Maybe there's some people, but for the most part, we lie to ourselves a lot. So
yeah, it's kind of like a side effect that comes from what you're actually trying to get, which is the looking better and feeling better, and all that type of stuff. So did you pursue fitness from like when you were in high school, or did you pick it up later, or when did you really start doing these crazy runs? And
yeah, I mean, so when I was in high school, initially I was lazy. I wasn't in any sports. I played like maybe some little league as a kid or something, and I sucked. And I was kind of like skinny fat. And then I remember moving to high school in Hawaii and getting my ass just kicked by big Samoan dudes, right? Just because I'm a white guy. I'm not Hawaiian or Pacific Island or any of these things. There's like some serious racism there for white people. You know what I mean?
jeez, okay.
And so I went to the gym after that, like during summer vacation my sophomore year, and I put on 40 pounds. And I came back, and I was a big guy at that point. You know what I mean? A lot bigger guy in high school. I was really dedicated to not getting my ass kicked anymore. And I kind of had this little transformation too. I woke up one morning, I remember thinking like, why not me? Right? Because I was like, oh, what's different about me? Like, all these kids that are popular, the jocks and stuff in school, there's nothing different about me. It's just the mindset. Like I could be that if I want to, right? And so I had this vision of who I want to become, and I started pretending to be that person, acting as if I was already that person, playing that role, and I became that person. And in that mind, I was like, in my mind, I was like, what would that person do? I was like, oh, so I enrolled in sports. I enrolled in track and wrestling and football, and I did all those sports, even though I had not played any sports really in my life. And I just, I sucked at first, and then I got good, and I got to the gym, and I started running. And so that was sort of like my first transformation, but it didn't last because it was really an external transformation, because internally I was doing all that stuff to get validation from people. I was trying to fit in. I was trying to get girls to like me. I was looking for that. I wasn't doing it for me. And so I eventually got fat after that as a software developer. I tore my pec and I lost like my whole identity when that happened because I couldn't even lift weights. And so I got up to like 300 pounds, and not a good 300 pounds. Like, it was bad. And then I remember, when this was probably around like 29 or so, I went to the store to buy some 46 jeans or some pants, right? They were size 46. I was like, shit. I was like, John, you are a fat ass. I could no longer just like pretend like I had a little bit of a belly. I was like, damn, you are actually like a fat ass. Seriously. And I was like, is this how you want your life to go? Like, and I had this vision in my head, like, I think of this thing as I call it, everyone thinks they're going to be a rock star someday, which means that we all think that like someday, like we're going to get that fame, we're going to become famous, or we're going to have like all the girls or have the cars or become rich. And it's like, maybe not even this lifetime, maybe the next, but I realized, I was like, this is a fucking dream, John, because that stuff is not going to happen. It's not just going to magically happen. And I had this kind of sobering moment where I said, if you want that stuff, if you want to be what you're capable of being, then you have to make it fucking happen. And you have to do it right now, because on the path you're going, it's not. And so that was it. I lost 100 pounds in 6 months, started really seriously running. I was doing it for the right reasons. Now it was like, I was seriously wanted to change myself and become the guy that I really wanted to become in my life. This vision I had in my head, the rock star John. And that really, transformed things for me. So that, and then, at that point I'd gotten really good shape and whatnot, but I still hadn't like taken things to the extreme with the running. That didn't happen later until really around the time Bulldog Mindset, where I had this other kind of switch in my head where I realized that I was still really weak, that I was still, I was internally very weak. I had a lot of fear. I was guarding myself, protecting myself. And actually what really triggered this was something Tony Robbins said. I went to a Tony Robbins seminar called Date with Destiny, and he was on stage and he said, the quality of your life is in direct proportion to the amount of uncertainty you can comfortably live with. And I realized that I had built my whole life around certainty. That uncertainty was not, and I had low because I built this fortress around myself. And so from that day forward, I started taking risks and I started pushing things to the limit. And I started to try and embrace uncertainty as much as possible. And that led me down this whole path of really of true spiritual and personal growth. And as part of that, my goals shifted. Instead of like doing things for what I could get, my goals became doing things for what I could become. And so that's where I started pushing myself harder and running. I never thought that a guy my size, 240 pounds, could run a marathon. And so I did it, and I ran a marathon. And then I said, well, I need to run a under 4-hour marathon, which is pretty unheard of at my size, but I did it. And then I took it to the next level and said, well, I need to run an ultra marathon. And so, yeah, I just kept on pushing it in order to see what I could become.
Yeah, it's crazy what the mind can do. And like you're a great example of that. For anybody watching, I'll have your Instagram and everything in the description. Like you're pretty jacked, and it's pretty crazy to see someone running that much and then also being that muscular. Like typically I associate cardio with, that's my worst nightmare. I don't want to go near that. But you've managed to do both. Is that just because you've had years of weightlifting under your belt, or do you think cardio even affects it negatively?
I think it's a combination of things. Another good person to follow that I just recently found, I had him on my channel, is Alex Vida. He's a big dude and he runs ultras. The only other one I know that does it. And actually also sort of not quite as big, but Patrick Cutter also is another one. He has on Instagram, I think it's I run 22.6 is his Instagram handle. Pretty about 180 pounds, but he runs like a 2-hour and I want to say 20-minute marathon. Like it's insane, right? Like just insane. Like that's fast for someone half his size, or not. I guess maybe 30 pounds or 40 pounds lighter. But anyway, I think that most people are just wrong in the fitness community. I think they're just full of bullshit because they haven't done it. Now I'll say this, a couple things about this. So I was running, I mean, I'm pretty big, right? I'm 6'3", I'm about 240 pounds right now. When I was really like lean running, I'd be 6'3", 220 pounds, okay? and I ran half marathons and marathons for 4 years, completely natural, okay, eating 1 meal a day, running anywhere between 40 to 60 miles a week. And if I can maintain my size at that, and I actually gained some muscle during that period of time at some point, lifting 3 times a week, full body workouts in the gym, then when people say that they're going to run like 5 miles a week or 10 miles a week or even 15 miles a week and they're going to lose mass, they're full of shit. There is a point. I mean, if you're running 100-mile weeks, I bet it'll be pretty hard to maintain mass. But I don't know where that is, because I was running 80-mile weeks when I was training for the ultras, and you can look at my Instagram, I still have the same mass. Now, the only difference with last year with me running ultra is that about a year ago, I did get on TRT. I'm 40, okay? I had some really high SHBG levels. And so that probably helped me to retain more muscle mass while I was doing the ultra. That probably, but before then, I was still running marathons and still running 40 to 60-mile weeks with nothing, no TRT, nothing at all. And I was maintaining the mass. And you can look at it over my YouTube videos for the last 4 years, or over my Instagram, and you can see that that's the case. So yeah, so I think a lot of people are just full of crap because they haven't actually done it, right? Because very few people that are bodybuilder type of size actually have run a marathon or run. Actually, there's another great example is and I don't know if he's on TRT. He might be. He doesn't say whether or not. But Nick Bear, he runs a sports company, Bear Nutrition, right? Mm-hmm. That dude, he's jacked, right? I mean, he's jacked, and he's running fast marathons. He's running a triathlon, or training for a triathlon right now. That dude is like, and he films all his stuff. He's pretty legit. Again, I don't know if he's on TRT or not, but there's definitely examples of it. The key thing is this: it's like, if you lift heavy and you eat enough protein, there's no reason why you're going to lose muscle, and that you can't gain muscle, right? It doesn't matter if you're running, as long as you're eating enough calories. So yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like the last, I think it was a month ago now, when all the gyms got shut down, that kind of just put a wrench in my whole, workout regimen. But I started running, just like trying to do a mile in the mornings, and I didn't notice any crazy decrease in weight or anything like that. Really, it was just something to stay active. But I guess I wasn't sure with the whole 50 milers. I didn't know what that's like. But
yeah, and for the average person, like you said, I mean, if you're running a mile, running 5 miles a day or something like that, that's like, I was running 20, 25, 30-mile runs. I mean, and I was maintaining mass. So when people are like, oh, I'll lose muscle from running a 5K, I'm like, come on, like,
yeah, for sure,
it's not gonna happen.
So I know I've seen you on, I'm not sure if it was a podcast or just a clip on YouTube or something, but with Stephen Arnio, rest in peace. But I was a big fan of all his content as well. Mm-hmm. And he wrote the book Hard Times Create Strong Men. And
great book.
The whole premise of it was the hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And that was like a few years ago, and now in 2020 it seems like we're at that 100-year cycle, and it's really playing out to look like we're going in the direction that he was predicting. Is that what you think? Do you think we're right on like the tip of that hard times? We're about to go into the really hard times, or what do you think about all that with today?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we are. Look at how weak our generation of men is right now. I mean, when they said that they're going to shut down businesses and everyone's going to wear masks, I laughed, because I was like, there is no, like, you're going to have to fucking take people, like, you're going to get shot if you try and, like, what I mean? There's no way that all these men are going to stand down and be like, yeah, I'll wear a fucking mask. But it happened. And not only did it happen, but they actually brainwash enough weak young men to help them enforce it, that they're actually supporting it and promoting it. I'm like, it doesn't matter what side of politics you're on. Heck, I'm a classic liberal, right? Like, liberalism is completely changed. Classic liberalism was all about defending free speech and your rights, right? Right. My political belief is like libertarian. That's really what it is now. That which is the same as a classic liberal, basically. But I mean, people don't even know that. Like half the people that are listening to this, no offense, but you haven't even, like, you're so focused on Instagram and scrolling through TikTok that you don't even know history. And that's how they got here, is that so much of this young generation, they're so preoccupied with entertainment that they forgot there's no reading of philosophy. Who's read 1984 or Brave New World or Fahrenheit 451? That was supposed to be required reading in school. You know what I mean? Like, this has all been done before. Or the history of the Soviet Union, right? I mean, like all of this stuff has happened before. And so, yeah, so we're hitting this again. And the reason why is because it's going to take, what's happened now is all the men that were alive during World War II, they're basically all dead now. And so no one remembers what hard times were like.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to have to go through hard times in order for men to realize that. But my hope is that, guys like us, we can help raise and bring a tribe of strong men together that will survive this and teach men that need to be taught when they're ready for the time. Like, there's a lot of guys in my circle that are like, it's time for the uprising. Let's, you know what I mean? Like, you saw like the kind of crap that happened in the Capitol building and stuff like that. And it's like, no, it's not time for the uprising, right? It's time for us to grow in numbers and to strengthen men, because we don't have the numbers and we don't have the strength, right? It's so comical. Even when you look at what happened in the Capitol recently, that was comical. That was a joke. That was not like, again, I'm not saying that we should necessarily have a violent revolution, but that was a mockery of our actual revolution, of actually doing something, and it was a mockery of the country itself. Like, it served no purpose. Like, if you had actually a real force, that would be something to reckon with. But we don't have that, and we're in that cycle. That's where we're at right now, and things are going to get worse. We have to go through this. We have to experience, because the thing is, with censorship and everything that's happening right now, people don't realize it until, there's that other poem. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it basically goes along the lines of, they came for so-and-so and I didn't say anything. And then they came for so-and-so, and then they came for the Jews and I wasn't one of them. And and then they came for me and there was no one left. And that's what's going to happen with censorship. And, there's no way for people to experience that until they become the victim of it. And then they start to realize, and then, hopefully the next generation will say, wait a minute, we need to stop this and turn it around. The pendulum always swings back and forth. But it's good to know what's coming so you can know how to prepare for it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think you're spot on. The frustrating part is it just seems like it's a wave that we're not going to be able to, that we're going to have to ride out as far as how bad things will get. But I guess that's just the way she goes.
But the good thing is this, I'll give some hope. Okay. It's never been a better time to be a strong man today. You will reap the benefits of being a strong man today, because there's so few of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you that for you guys, you young guys that are like, oh, I can't get girls, and no. Yeah, that's because so many men are fucking pussies today. You be a strong man and you watch. Like you have to actually stand up and not be afraid of like trying to say the right thing say the thing that you believe. Be a strong man who actually has his own convictions, and you will be a rarity. You'll be a rarity. Women will want you because they'll have so few guys like that, and men will want to be around you as well. And so there's a great opportunity here. When everything is going one direction, you can get upset and you can be like, oh, the world is going to shit, doomer. There's no point. Or you can say, you know what? It's a chance for you to stand out. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think a lot of that, where that comes from, is having good fathers. I know my dad instilled a lot of those values in me at a young age, as far as just having convictions and, being, I guess not conforming to what it's turning into now. And I know you do some teaching of that as well with your membership group or various other ways. Is that the main premise of your teaching men how to get girls, for example? Is it just developing strong men? Is that the core value there?
That's the core of it, right? So I kind of joke around. People always ask me, because I talk on a lot of different topics. Some of them are controversial, right? And I always say I give men what they want, and then I give them what they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
So men want to get laid, they want to make money and be rich, they want the kind of material, superficial things of the world. And so a lot of what I teach is how to do those things, right? I can tell you how to talk to a girl and how to go and pick up a girl and do all these things, but that's not really what you want. That's what you think you want. And you need that in order to become courageous and to overcome your fears. Okay. But what you really want is to become a man of principles, of character, right? To really grow and develop yourself so that you don't need some tactics and you don't need to figure out some bullshit, and you don't need external validation to make you feel good about yourself. You're a man on a mission with a purpose, with the drive to accomplish what you want to do in life, and you hold yourself accountable, and you hold yourself as the only authority in your life, meaning that your value system reigns supreme in your life. You don't look at the judgment of others. You don't look at the judgment of your father. You look at yourself, as your internal compass as to what is right or wrong for you as a man. And that doesn't come just me giving that. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's what men need, but they come to me wanting to get laid. They come to me wanting to make money and build a business and invest in real estate and all those things. And I'll help them do those things. But my real purpose is to teach men how to become real men. And really, what the funny thing is, the core of this, what is it, the full expression of masculinity and manhood? It's to give your love to the world. That's what it is. That's your greatest gift. And so it's, but that is not a platform that is going to attract the people that I need to reach. So I kind of play both sides.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it seems like a very effective method. From as far as the content that I see, it definitely brings a lot of value. Even just everything you've been saying in this interview today, it's some great stuff. I don't want to take too much of your time. I did have some questions that I have on Instagram. If you don't mind, just spitfire answering some of these real quick. Okay.
Sure.
Righty. So, see, the first one is from smalik.12 on Instagram. He says, when would you weightlift and run if you do OMAD, before or after eating? Is it safe before?
Yeah, so I've done it before where I would fast. In fact, at one point I would run for like 10 miles. I would hit the gym, and then I would do Muay Thai for like an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then I would eat at like 7 o'clock. So it's fine. You can do that. It takes some time maybe to adapt your body to it. So your blood sugar control but what's probably optimal is eating one meal a day as breakfast. That's probably optimal, right? Because same fasting period, but you're having it at a different time. I think that's probably better for muscle synthesis, and then for having the fuel for the workouts, it probably makes more sense. I haven't tested it extensively, but it's harder. It's harder to do that. So for most guys, I just say just fast until 5 or 6 o'clock every night. That's like the simple rule. But if you want to do the breakfast thing, go for it. It's just hard. I'll say that.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And then for anybody listening, OMAD stands for one meal a day, right? So
yeah.
Okay, cool. And then Sydney Lewis says, I'm not a guy, LOL, but I stay motivated, how do you stay motivated in the gym?
So the first thing I'll say is that motivation is not required. You cannot depend on motivation, because motivation is finicky. It will come and go. So you have to learn how to work without motivation, right? So you have to decide, make a commitment to doing the thing. Plenty of days I go into the gym, I really don't feel like fucking being there. I want to be somewhere else, but I just do the thing I need to do, one rep at a time, one set at a time, get it done. That's it. If you go through your life thinking that you need to be motivated to do things, you're never going to get anywhere, because you'll be motivated to do things for some period of time, but you'll always lose that motivation. So don't rely on motivation. Don't try to think of ways to hack your motivation. Instead, try to think of ways to force yourself to commit to things and then do them, whether you feel like it or not. And that's the definition of discipline.
Yeah, just showing up. That's awesome. Max Soko says, tips on dating at 18.
Well, the biggest thing I would say is that focus on the value that you'll be when you're 35 as a man. Because let me tell you, I'll tell you from personal experience, and just from the girls that are in their 20s, that are those girls, the hottest girls, they want guys that are in their 30s. That's just how it is. I mean, I'm not saying you can't have success in your 20s and you're 18 or so, but just don't get frustrated and think that your life is over. Like so many guys that I coach that are like 18, 19, 20. It's like it takes time for you to blossom as a man to come into you. Men are created, women are born, right? So it takes time to build that up. So focus your energies on building yourself as a man, building your physique, becoming more grounded in who you are, developing yourself, reading a lot of books, building a business, becoming financially independent. But so by the time that you hit 35, right, where almost all the other guys are fat and overweight, and maybe they're successful or not, but a lot of them are losers in life. You are this single stud guy who has your choice of women, and along with that also gain the experience. So date, but don't get into, and no girlfriends, no long-term relationships until you're like 30. I know this sounds controversial, but you'll benefit greatly from that, because don't have anything that's tying you down, because you need to have experience with women, especially today, because women are getting experience, believe me, if you want to be able to successfully choose a woman and make right choices, and also to be a man in a relationship that isn't come from a scarcity. Most of the guys that I coach that are in relationships that end up having fucked up relationships or messed up marriages and sexless marriages and all this stuff, the reason why is because they walk on eggshells and they don't know how to have a masculine frame in their relationship. So they get run over, they because they just don't have experience. They don't have experience. And they also did not pick well because they didn't have a lot of options. So become a guy who has a lot of options. Focus on the future, and while you're young, the best advice I'd say is just get over your fear of approaching. Just go and talk to women that you find attractive. Don't put any pressure on yourself on having success or results. Just get over that and build yourself up. And believe me, but by the time you hit like 30, I know it seems a far way away. Your life is going to be so fucking incredible, but you gotta bide your time until then. Don't go to the club and fucking put money on your credit card and buy bottles and all this shit now, right? Living the YOLO life, thinking your 20s is it. Work hard, bust your ass, grind it out during your 20s, and when you're in your 30s, man, you're going to live a life that people only dream of.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great advice there. The last two questions are we kind of already answered. Russo, Daniel, cardio and weightlifting, and then Pablo, how to stay consistent. I think we kind of already touched on those. And then because this is the Get Wealth podcast, I always, I actually like to ask these last two questions pretty quick. What's a book you recommend?
Yeah, so trying to think which one I would recommend here. I've got a lot of really good books. How about this one? Since this is wealth, how about a good classic? How about The Richest Man in Babylon? Really good book.
I've heard of that one. Okay.
Yeah, good book, old book. It's a lot of financial wisdom
Hmm.
that is timeless.
All right, noted. And then lastly, what is your definition of wealth?
That's good. I was just talking to the guy that was just driving me over here in the car. I said the difference between being rich and being wealthy. There's a lot of rich people. Wealth is money that is a money supply that returns every month, that does not run out, that is perpetual. I call it the well that never runs dry. Someone who is wealthy, they have passive income that they live off of. Someone who's rich lives off of earned income, and they may have a lot, but someone who's wealthy lives off of passive income.
That's awesome. That's a new one. I get a lot of answers about the non-materialistic things and all that stuff, but that's a good way of defining it that I haven't heard yet. So awesome. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Well, John, it's been great talking to you. You provided a lot of value in this podcast, and so I want to thank you for coming on. And hopefully we can stay in touch over the years. Just I'll bug you every once in a while if you don't mind.
Yeah, definitely.
Is there anything you can plug right now where people can find you as far as your business, your Instagram, social media?
Yeah, best thing to do is just go to bulldogmindset.com. There'll be a little pop-up that asks if you want to take the Bulldog quiz, which of course you do because you want to know what your Bulldog score is. It's a score from 0 to 100. Basically, to tell it how much of a Bulldog you are, how much mental toughness you have, how little victim mindset that you have. Just 10 questions, fill it out, you'll get your score, and then I'll send you some videos and some emails on how to raise that score to make it higher. So bulldogmindset.com.
Awesome. Alrighty. Bulldog Mindset, everybody. Get wealthy.